I, Prajakta Adhikari, on behalf of the Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, warmly welcomes all our participants and our special guest for today. The Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, IEAR, which is a Mumbai based educational, research, and training institute with a vision to create a sustainable environment through scientific research, education and training, socio-cultural understanding, community engagement, and awareness. We are a multidisciplinary group of scientists, professionals, and academicians who've joined forces to form this organization, having worked collaboratively for more than 15 years on education, environment consultancy, and awareness. Our mission is Environment First. This is the 21st webinar in the series, which we started during the lockdown period. So far, we have reached out to more than 5,000 participants altogether. Our main objective in this webinar series is to provide educational and research inputs and a scientific and analytical approach to environmental issues. I would now welcome Dr. Roshni Yehuda, President of IEAR, to conduct today's session. Dr. Roshni.
And a warm welcome to all of you present and to also our special guest of today, Nili Portugali. The session today is quite different from our earlier sessions. It is about the film and the Alley She Whitewashed in Light Blue, a film by architect and producer director Nili Portugali. It is set in the ancient city of Sfat, mountain-top town in the north of Israel, often referred to as a city of Kabbalah, with a historic and religious significance. Here, the Jewish settlements date back to the temple period when the Kabbalistic scholars fleeing from the Spanish Inquisition settled around the 16th century. The film is seen and narrated through Nili herself as a young girl experiencing the city's sights, sounds, texture, and people. Most of you who are here have, of course, seen the film, and I'm sure eager to meet Nili and discuss with her. But I want to briefly put forth some significant aspects of the film that I thought were significant. I'm sure everybody has their own perspective. The film begins with a question of what is the essence of the places where we feel at home. And this is a thread that runs through the film. Many of us who saw it, and I've discussed with some of you, linked it to our own rare visits during summer vacation to our hometowns, as we call it. Most of us now completely are delinked from these hometowns as we are settled in the cities. And the sights, smells, and sounds of these hometowns, however, remain part of our psyche throughout our lives. I wonder how important that link to the hometown is for most of us. The film's central theme is also Nili's grandmother, Rivka Berenson, to whom the film is dedicated to, and who single-handedly running the hotel in Spa gives one the impression of a solid and grounded person, a woman who sacrificed many things for her family, diligent, perfectionist, and most importantly, caring and loving, which comes out, for example, in the scene of the Passover, where she prepares food for those in the neighborhood who do not have the means. What I really also enjoyed about the film is its pace, which allows one to experience a place such as the courtyard or the garden. You know, the film is basically very slow. I mean, as you can feel and hear and experience each and every aspect. For example, you can experience the courtyard, the garden with the sound of the chirping birds, or the kitchen with the sounds of the peeling apples, the dough mixer, and so on, which is unlike most films today where the frames move so fast, leaving no time for reflection. Or the phone at the reception bell and the chiming of the grand pendulum clock, especially, were something that took me to another era. There is also, of course, architecture, experienced as physical patterns and textures, the mid-19th century building of the hotel, the synagogue that we see with its very rare, intricate carvings of the Hikal, and the city, which we experience with its, humane street alleys, the cobblestone streets, the balconies, which remind us somewhat like Parsi colony in Mumbai, high wooden windows, and many unique features. And architecture also, which did not strive to be iconic, but tried to make man or person feel at home. We also, of course, experience all the Jewish traditions through very unique visuals in the celebrations of Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, and Passover, and also the observations of Yom Kippur. Lastly, the film allows us rare glimpses of history through the photo montaging of the pictures of Sfat from probably Nili's collection. I think I will stop here and turn over to Nili to introduce herself and also say a few words about the film.
Good evening to everybody, and really thanks for coming to this virtual event. I hope you all watched the film before and also enjoyed it. Before I will say a few words on the film, I would like really to thank Dr. Roshni Udyavar Yehuda, the president of the Institute, for her many efforts for this event to happen. Thank you very much, Roshni, and your team, of course. I came to create the film, not from the film industry, but from the world of architecture, which is part of the art world in general. And I always thought also that architecture should also be taught in art schools and not in technological institute, though I was teaching in both. I'm a practicing architect living in Tel Aviv, and I was a senior lecturer in Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem and the Technion Institute of Technology in Haifa. Now, in the early 80s, I did selected postgraduate studies in UC Berkeley in architecture and Buddhism, as well as studies and research work with Professor Christopher Alexander at his Center for Environmental Structure in Berkeley. And since then, actually, my main focus was implementing into practice the holistic phenomenological approach to architecture in the actual buildings that I designed in my studio in Israel. So the film is in fact the third of a trilogy, I would say, following the buildings I designed and the published books that I wrote. And as you saw, the question that engaged me in the world of architecture and art, the film deals with them as well, but of course in a different way. I'm a 7th generation descendant of a family living in the holy Kabbalah city of Tzfat in Israel since early 19th century. And this was the world that had the most impact on my worldview as a whole. And when I started to think about the film, I knew that there will be substantial connection between what I've experienced and absorbed as a child in Tzfat and my present point of view on architecture and art, which undoubtedly, derived also from this place. But moreover, from my present scientific point of view, I understood that what I've experienced unconsciously as a child in Tzfat is not a subjective phenomena, only due, to my intimate relationship to the place, but rather a universal and objective one. And now I will be very happy to answer to any question that you may have after you watched the film.
I think there are many people who would like to ask questions to you. Yes, and Dr. Kashyap. So Dr. Kashyap, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's nice to see you, Nili.
Thank you. You as well.
Yeah, and the first thing is when I saw this film, I found it is very artistic, and it actually gives you nostalgia. It takes you back many years when we also were children. So it was something that struck you at the heart, and you said, yes, this is what it should be. And that is the experience that most of us have gone through, especially me, of course. I'll relate to it a little bit later. But what I felt was that such films should have a larger viewing audience. That means you should be able to send it across the world so that many more people can see. And if you send it to, say, people like those in the villages, they will be able to relate it better and with the environment. The construction may not be very important, the architecture may not be very important, but the feeling, what you said about your childhood and how you felt about the place, that is what is very important. It comes out very clearly in your film. Now, just to give an example of what I have gone through. Now, as a child, I used to stay in Bangalore, and my village was about 100 kilometers away from Bangalore, called Kollegal. Now, my grandfather and my grandmother used to stay there with the family. But we were about 10 cousins who always used to go there during the holidays. And especially the grandmother, like you have shown, my grandmother used to be very caring. And one incident I'll just relate to tell you how things move. Now, when you have 10 children around you and you have to feed them, now, normally what you would have done, you would have put 10 plates and you would have served the 10 children 10 those things for eating. Now, when you have 10 plates, after the people finish eating, they will have to wash the plates. And I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, late 50s and early 60s. Now, imagine we had a big house and there was a well at the back. Now, you have to draw water from the well for whatever use, whether it's for drinking, washing, everything. Now, the grandmother would say that if I have to wash 10 plates, I have to go draw the water and use it for washing. So every time you require for drinking or washing, you have to go and draw from the well. Now, which is a tedious process. But suppose you say that the grandmother, what she used to do is on a banana leaf, she used to mix the rice and curry in a large quantity, and all of us used to put our hand out as if it is a cup. Now she used to make balls of that rice and curry and put it in each of the children's hands. So what we used to do, as it went round, and once the lunch was over, all we had to do was wash our little hands, and the grandmother would take that banana leaf and give it to the cows. We had cows in the backyard, so the cows would have eaten the banana leaf. Now you see how things have gone. You've used minimum amount of water for washing. You have used a banana leaf for serving lunch. And once the lunch is served, the banana leaves goes and the cows are eating the banana. So there is no wastage. Everything is recycled. So which is an interesting thing, the concepts, what we are talking about. So your film immediately brought to my mind that this is what you can relate with yourself, the environment. The second thing is conditioning as children. So if you say that I go back to my native place most of the time. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, when we go back to our native place all the time, what is it that pulls us to that native place? One is the grandmother and the grandfather, because they always care for grandchildren. So that is an attachment which never goes away. Now, what happened was, over the years later on, when my grandmother expired and she was no more, that attachment became little less. And once I moved from Bangalore to Mumbai, going back to native place was a big hassle at that time. Traveling by train, it would take 2 days to go to that place. So slowly that connection was lost. But we can never forget that what we experience as children, we even today, I feel that we should have places like that where we can go back again and again. So now I have a bungalow in about 100 kilometers from Mumbai, where I feel that connect can be brought back. And of course, people like Roshni and others have visited the place, and Roshni keeps visiting, and she knows how nice it is to go back to environments like that. So I'll stop at this, and somebody else can take over.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I really appreciate your words, and I am just curious to know, are you engaged with the world of architecture or not necessarily?
Roshni has been my, what do you call, magnetic principle for getting myself attached to architecture. See, I'm basically a microbiologist. I've done my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in microbiology.
I see.
And I've been in the field of microbiological products, wastewater treatment, and water purification. And over a period of 10 years, I used to take care of the Eureka Forbes Institute of Environment as the program director.
I see.
Where we used to talk to people, whether it was children, young adults, seniors, all about water pollution, air pollution, how it happens, how do you take care of it, and how you take care of the environment.
I see.
Now,
okay. Yeah, how you
yeah.
connected.
And during this time, something about rainwater harvesting came up, which was the focus in Mumbai at that time. I'm talking about 2000, 2002. Then we had a seminar in one of the hotels where I was attending, and Roshni also happened to be there because she had other contacts and she was also interested in the environment. And from there it took off, and then she called me for lectures in the Institute of Architecture at that time, which was at Rachna Sansad. And from that time till today, we are together. And she has taught me a lot of things on architecture. So I can appreciate what architecture and architects are all about. And I feel very happy, that I've got associated with a lot of people who are actually architects and who have taught me a lot in this field. And I'm now trying to relate the environment and architecture. And I've started thinking how the built environment and the microbiology of it can be interrelated and how things could be made better. So we're talking about what? Microbes and built environment.
It's interesting, actually. His last comment was, I'm also thinking about it, because once your relatives are gone, are you still feel related to the place, which is, except for, myself, I go, I still have cousins there, so I go from time to time, but also to, for the Memorial Day for my grandmother and stuff like that. But I think mainly after they go and after I made the film, I leave the memories more. Yeah, it's what I really remember, and not really, because when I go there, actually, Tzfat itself is very different from what I was reconstructing in my film. I mean, it doesn't look really like this today. As a whole, as a city, the hotel doesn't belong to us, changed a lot. So yeah, what are you actually still connected to? I don't know, but it's really, I think, more, you try to keep the memories, and as long as you're alive, it's alive, And but I feel very happy that I documented the situation that I experienced, maybe for the generations to come, to my children, to my grandchildren, etc. But it's a question, you know, because I really like the place so much. And I even thought about moving and living there, you know, after my, something. But then I said, okay, but when I go back there, it's not what I'm expecting. I mean, it's not what I have in my memory at all. So what's the relevance of now having a house there? Something like this. No, this really, I mean, it's a big question because and you know, you can hear it from many people, you know. I know that many people who are looking for their roots, you know, going to Europe to see the house of their grandmother who was there before the war, and it's another world, it's another. So in that sense, I don't know, I'm confused with this debate, I would say also. So if you have any solution or any insight about that, let me know.
I fully agree with her on the memories. And the second thing is, as far as I am concerned, my cousins are all over the world. So the question of going back to that place to meet everybody together has become impossible nowadays, and even in those times. So that connection may be lost, but we keep in touch. Right now, with all the WhatsApp and the Facebook and whatnot, we can still keep in touch with people. But as you said, memories are never lost.
Yeah,
You'll always have memories.
you know, physically we are not connected, but maybe mentally, and that's it, you know. It's
I feel that everybody should cherish their memories.
Thank you, Nili, for that beautiful movie and for beautifully documenting Safat. I think it became also particularly engaging because sketching and related it to your childhood. One thing that stood out, I felt, was the red shoes, the red skirt, the red dress. And it kind of made me curious, every other frame, even with tourists coming and going, there'd be a lady in a red dress. It was beautifully pictorially documented, but the red color made me curious. And since we had this opportunity to interact with you, I thought I'll ask you this question.
First of all, you know, when I was a child, really, we used to wear a red, you know, red shoes and stuff like that. So it's not, I would say, not really remote from the reality. But I think that in my case, more than that, of course, is I asked, you know, I was really engaged with the harmony of colors in the film, in everything, not only in the red. So I was thinking, you know, if she's standing, you know, on the wall, which is like light blue, or near the shutters, or she's going near, you know, the green shutters or the blue shutters, what color will, you know, will be, you know, sort of uplifting the other colors and itself. So it's really a question of, you know, the sort of interrelationship between the colors that, you know, I dealt a lot with it in architecture. I even taught my students about it because I think it's one of the very important things. So, and also, of course, in the film. So it's really, it comes more from that side.
I think visually it made a powerful impact. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the sound of the knife scraping on the apple. And that was again another sound that was repeated over and over again in the movie. So graphically and orally, I really enjoyed it. And as I was mentioning to Roshni and the people in IEAR team, was that I was torn between the visual graphics and in reading the subtitles. So I was constantly going to the subtitles and the text, but and that's why I could appreciate the sound of shoes on the cobble, and orally also it was very powerful. Thank you for making the movie and sharing it.
Thank you for your nice words. Thank you.
Yeah, I think in continuation to Sunanda's comment, I also found that it was as I think I watched it 3-4 times maybe, and every time I watched, I noticed that there was like this group of people who were supposed to be the guests, or maybe, I don't know, part of the family. So you could see them in so many different frames, you know, and then like you realize the connection of them being the audience or the part of the city or something like that. They could be the part of the family or part of the guests of the hotel or anything, but that was quite interesting. And the color combination also, we noticed there was one lady with a red dress and one lady with another blue, dark blue or something like that. That was quite something. I really liked the film, the way it was made. I see Sadhna has raised her hand. Sadhna.
I enjoyed the movie a lot, and actually being a poet, I found the movie is like a poetry flowing freely with emotions, showing culture, and I know any creativity creates unrest within. So when you feel like making of this movie, how much time it took from conception of this movie till successful launching of this movie?
How long did it take, the process, you ask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you feel like preparing movie and how much it took and your working process about the movie, I would like to know about it.
Well, it took me 7 years. The film was world premiered in Mumbai International Film Festival 3 years ago, and then I had a few screenings in Delhi, and then in New Delhi, it was in the Indian International House in Delhi. There was a screening, and then after the screening, a guy came to me whom I, of course, didn't know. Afterwards, he said he's a film critic or whatever, and he said, you know, your film is like a poem. So what you say now, it reminds me, yeah. Anyway, you see, it took me 7 years. First of all, you know, I'm not from the industry, and I learned I learned all the things along the process, actually. So before, okay, I took few courses in the university just to learn the language or how to speak with, you know, the team and stuff like that. But and also the other things is, you know, also in architecture, it's very similar to the way that I'm doing architecture, which is very, very different from the from how architects work and how, of course, filmmakers do film. And let me explain you. You see, in architecture, you know, following my holistic approach, I really do everything. You know, I design not only the building, but the furnitures, the landscape, the flowers, everything, because I really think that, you know, they say that, you know, God is in the details, but it's like this. I think the interrelationship between the details really makes the whole. And in the film, I think the same. So, you know, in the film industry, it's very differentiated. I mean, you know, one is doing the editing, one is taking the photography, one is doing the sound, one is doing this, one is doing that. And of course, there is the director who is the, I would say, you know, is somehow controlling the whole, but still. And here, except for the cinematography, which was done by really the two best one in Israel, I did everything. I did the editing. I did, of course, the writing and, you know, the text, of course. And I chose the music. And I did what they call the production design, you know, everything, actually. And this took a long time. First, of course, because, you know, it takes time, it's a lot of work. And I was the producer also, which was the most difficult thing, because all the others, let me tell you, I think you can appreciate that when you deal with many, you know, domains of art, there is more common between them than difference. So a lot of things I brought from the architecture in terms of how to relate to the things. Of course, the technical things I didn't know. You know, you have to learn that. Each media has its own technical things, of course. So, but let me tell you, I mean, you know, to decide about the frame of a movie is like doing the facade of a building, or a courtyard, or graphic design of a page of a book. You know, all my books, I not only wrote, but I did the graphic design, because it's the same. I mean, the same in terms of, I would say, the fundamentals of harmony, you know, is the same. I mean, you see, if you take poetry, which I really don't know almost nothing, I mean, about this professional domain, but you know, there is this balance between silent and noise and intensity of void, you know, that you want people to breathe. So all these things, you know, it's in architecture, in the spaces that you want to create, you know, or even in the film. So yeah, so in terms of the creative things there, it was not difficult for me at all, but it took time, of course, and also, yeah, so it was very slow, and I took my time, because I think that's the way art should be made. You know, when my clients in architecture said, we want quickly the plans, you know, in 3 months, he says, so I always ask them, listen, if you make a cake, you know, can you put it in the, and it needs 30 minutes in the oven, can you put it 20 minutes in the oven? No, you can't. So also, you know, architectural plans, drawings, takes time. So also this, you know, it takes time, and the more time it takes, the better. It's also like back and forth, you know, you look at it and then you change, and thanks God, I was the producer, so nobody pushed me.
Yeah, I found the flow, like what Sadhna said about the flow from your you know, personal experiences to your grandmother, to the culture and traditions, and then to architecture. We could find that flow. There was no sort of, you know, disruption, and we were not left at any point of the film wondering why, you know, suddenly we see some buildings or why architecture has come in. It was, I think that what she wanted to also say is that there is a beautiful flow in the film. So I see Divya had raised her hand. Yes, please go ahead, Divya. Divya, please introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Divya, and I have recently done my master's in commerce. And so, like, I'm just a student right now.
Master's in, sorry, which subject?
Master's in commerce. Actually, first of all, I really want to appreciate the holistic way that I got introduced to in the film, because initially, when this question was raised, that was the center of the film, that what exactly is it that makes these things people feel at home? Then I felt this is more of a psychological phenomena. But then, as I went on watching the film, I could really appreciate the holistic view taken. And sometimes I could really relate, yes, this is the thing that actually connects me. I could even think of, especially when the courtyard was being talked about, I could think about how the structures in my villages have been constructed, and how I feel so very good there. So in this regard, like, I had majorly two questions, not exactly questions, but aspects that I think were standing out in my mind by the end of the film. First thing, as we discussed today, that these places evoke different feelings in you. So when I'm back in my village, I feel very much at ease, much less restless. And when I'm back here, I think it is more of a psychological thing that I feel this is my home where I live with my parents. But I don't know, like, as initially it was discussed that once maybe people who are living there in the village, if they are not there anymore, when you go back, do you have the same kind of feeling? I do not think I would be having it. Then I thought, like, what exactly would be the relevance of the structural patterns? How exactly, uh, what kind of belongingness can you still feel? What kind of feeling at home can you still feel when the people you originally associated with are not there? So, like, this feeling aspect was there, that yes, when you feel at home somewhere, the feelings that it evokes in you, they are completely different. And my second aspect that I was thinking about, it related to awareness. So with the code of Dalai Lama, as it was introduced, that you have to be in a state where you can where your perception is very high, where you can perceive things without your mind intervening a lot in between. So I was just thinking that, like, I usually think that the recent generations, especially when I like look at my parents, so I feel the recent generations, they are losing touch with their culture. And like my grandmother was much more connected, and people before her, they were even more connected to the culture that we have. So I was thinking about the role of culture in helping us create such patterns. So I was thinking, how important is culture in building that kind of awareness in us, that kind of perception in us, and then letting us have the feel of the area, and then create those things which are, timeless, as you talked about.
Sorry, let me see if I understood your question. What you're actually asking is if the things that I was talking about, that one is aware that it happened with cultures more in the past, can be implemented in our present life, or what?
Actually, I wanted to know that, we have different cultures. So I just wanted to know that, like, what could be the importance of culture in helping us uh, have that perception, have that awareness of our environment, and then create that art, which you refer to as timeless. So, like, is culture that important in creating that sort of art? This is what I wanted to ask.
You see, the thing is that there might be, different cultures, and there might be also subjective feelings. As you said, I mean, you are connected to a place, even I would say if it's very ugly or whatever, but your grandmother lived there, or so it's very subjective. Or you are connected to certain kind of music that you are used to hear. The Chinese, they can then like this. But what I'm trying to put forward, actually, the theme of the film and my approach, or not my approach, but the school of thought that I'm actually feeling I adopted, is that beyond these subjective things, which, makes different cultures and different times and different countries and different places, there is something which is common to them, as long as really you can experience, I would say, in those places at home. You see, I go back to you see, what the Center for Environmental Structure in Berkeley, headed by Christopher Alexander, did. They were, they based on the hypothesis that among all these places that we feel at home, regardless of if we belong to that place, or regardless of the time, but you can be, Indian, and you can go in the old city of Jerusalem or to a synagogue. I can be, I don't know, Israeli, but once I enter, I don't know, a Zen center or a church, it can evoke, very emotional feelings. So the question, and that you can go to, I don't know, to a piazza in Siena, in, I don't know, in Paris, whatever, and there is, and although in form they look different, they might look different, the feeling that they create is very similar. So the question by this team of researchers were, okay, so what is the common, or what is the superstructure behind all these places, regardless the way they look, which creates this feeling? Because, I mean, how come that you have a very similar feeling, when, I took to Tzfat, the head of Tsinghua University, the head of the Department of Architecture there, he came to Israel. I took him to a synagogue in Tzfat. I mean, this Chinese guy, has nothing to do with these cultures, nothing to do with fat. And he was like, you know, like this. I mean, he was really, I mean, it really generated a lot of emotions in him. So the question is, what's going on here? And these are the pattern language. This is the pattern language, which is, you know, it's like they managed to identify 250 patterns. Of course, there may be more. That beyond what the place looks or the culture it belongs to, there is something in common. It's very similar to what, you know, Chomsky, the linguistics, say that among all the spoken languages, there is some innate patterns which are already printed in our mind from the outset, which belongs to all the languages. And this is why, you know, especially young children or anyone can learn languages that, you know, they not belongs to them. There is something in common between the languages. And also here, so what I was actually engaged with also is what is this thing? What is the secret of all? And I show it in the film just in 2 examples. You know, I showed the, you know, the lane in Venice, in Japan, in you know, in Greece, which has a very similar feeling. They look different. Now, the end result, actually, what you see is really the balance between the, I would say, the patterns or the superstructure and the situation on the site. And the situation on the site can be, you know, any forces. It can be materials which can be different in India than in Jerusalem. They build with stone. In India, they might do it with wood. So what the end result is really the sort of balance between the patterns, which are common to all, and the existing situation where you actually do the building. So one thing which is important to realize, which I always repeat, is that, you know, the past or ancient cultures or ancient tradition, although of course we can find there more what I'm talking about, they don't have they don't monopolize beauty. It's not that, you know, okay, because it happened in the past and because it belongs to tradition and it's beautiful. But these days it can't happen. No, that's not true, because I mean, if it's the case, so there is nothing to talk about anymore. So, but the thing is that if we will apply, you know, the patterns which did govern all these places that we learned from the past, and you know, and use them in these days, we can generate places in modern time which will have the same feeling. And things people don't imagine, you know, I don't want to talk about my buildings, but when people come to my buildings, they always think that it's a replica of the past. Why they think so? They know it's not. They know it was built, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's new, it's modern. They know it's not a conservation or anything like this. But the feeling they create gives them associations of feeling of buildings from the past. So what I'm trying to tell them, that, you know, you can use modern technology, you can use modern materials, you can use anything you want, as long as you do it in the right way, use the right patterns, which does create this feeling. And it can happen today also. It's a very nice comment, very nice.
Thanks, Divya, for that question. And coming from a commerce background, it's really nice to know that you watched the film and you were able to think through the film also. Great. I think we have others. Varsha is here, or anybody else who wants to ask a question.
I can just make a comment. I am from a medical background, and it was really an experience because it.
I don't see you. I don't see you.
No, I have not put my video on.
Okay.
Okay. So it really kindled my childhood memories. I was lucky to have two grandmothers with two different types of houses. So one was in Belgaum in South, which was made of stones and marbles and like a very big house. And other was in Konkan with the mud type of those old style mud with thick walls and all that. And now I realize that how deeply we are still connected to that architecture, because we still remember as cousins how the tile was and how the staircase was. So your film really made me connect to all those memories, and I also feel that those memories that we live there in childhood, in spite of whatever happens when we grow up, the cousins and wherever we go, we still relive those memories every time we meet and talk. Whatever happens between us, but still we are connected because of those childhood memories of our grandparent house. So it really rekindled my memories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Divya mentioned was the role of culture. And I just recall that in your film, there are these various events that happen. So is also whenever, you know, we always connected through with these events as well. And it is interesting you show the courtyard, because even in Indian architecture, courtyard is very much part of Indian architecture.
Yeah.
Yes, courtyard is very much also part of Indian traditional or vernacular architecture. Whether you go in the north of India, where you have, you know, Rajasthan, where the courtyards are of a different type, or you go in the south where the courtyards are probably smaller because the radiation is more intense and so on. But, you know, all over India, the traditional vernacular architecture does have courtyards as a feature. And unfortunately, in the modern buildings, the courtyards are disappearing because you know, as you mentioned in somewhere in the film, if I recall, that you know, it is not emptiness. It is a blank space, but it is not empty. It is not you know, it has a meaning, and it connects the whole building and it connects the whole structure. Somehow in modern buildings, people don't think about that. They just think about floor space, you know, how to maximize it. And so that's one of the reasons that we are also losing on some of these very beautiful concepts and ideas that we had in our old buildings, the vernacular buildings.
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunate, absolutely.
The title itself, you know, you said the alley was whitewashed in light blue. Now, my concept is if you whitewash, it should be white. So why did you use the term whitewashed in light blue?
Ah, wow. This is one of the most important scene, you know, in the film. I mean, that my grandmother was actually, whenever we came in Passover, Easter, you know, to her hotel, when I was walking in the alley, I saw in the distance, you know, every year that she was whitewashing the alley in light blue. Now, the reason I showed it is, again, you know, one of my questions that I put forward in the beginning of the film was not only what is the secret behind these places that we feel at home, but what is the methodology, or what is the state of mind that one has to be the creator in order to create these places. I think that my grandmother really, in the way she was peeling the apples, in the way she was whitewashing, you know, the wall, in the way that the Tanga painter is doing, you know, the Tanga, you know, the Tibetan painter doing. All of this was done by people who were really in full integrity with what they were doing. They were really immersed in what they were doing. I mean, and really, I mean, they were so immersed that I think that it brought them really to enlightenment. It's like, you know, so whitewashing, you know, the alley is not just the thing that, you know, she whitewashed the alley, but the way she was doing it and the activity, you know, the way she was carrying it out. So this was a very, very fundamental issue in the film.
I think the color light blue also has some relevance.
Yeah, no, the light blue itself is, of course, not only in Jewish tradition, but also in the Mediterranean, you see a lot of light blue. They say, you know, it connects to the heavenly. You know, it's one of the colors of the Kabbalah, white and light blue, and stuff like that, you know. So they really believe, you know, and they were also coloring, you know, the entrance doors with light blue, and the and the wearing clothes in blue, because yeah, they believed in this color. In a way, it's like, you know, the red color also, you know, in Buddhism they have these red threads. In Jewish tradition, when a baby is born, they put a red thread, you know, on the on the, how do you call it, on the bed. So there are these, you know, colors that people believe in. I don't know. One says it's against ghosts. One it's good luck. One it connects you to the heavenly. But anyway, it's a nice color. So
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for taking out time and screening the movie and also having this follow-up discussion. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Roshni, for conducting such a program. It's really a privilege. So it's not a question basically, but just a thought which I had. Since I also visited Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and many other cities, including Tokyo and the Inoshima Islands in Japan. So I've had this privilege of attending all and going to all these places in conferences and to present papers. But most strikingly, out of every place where I've been, I have seen this, that the old part like Jaffa or let's say Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. I mean, everywhere I have seen the old cities and the old structures resonating with me much more than the new structures and new buildings, which come up. Because when we go through these airports are all the same, the buildings are all the same, the cities are all the same, malls, etc. Everything is same.
Yeah.
But when you go to these old buildings, every space is different. I mean, not just the architecture, but all no, and the technique of construction and everything. All these spaces, talk to us as visitors. You know, so that I have felt that what could be the reason that we could connect more with the old spaces rather than the one which are more contemporary, which should actually invoke a modern chic kind of feeling. I'm really not sure. But when I went to Inoshima Islands for that, then it's like a cave, and you just walk around inside that cave. There's no architecture.
I think before anybody else has any question, I just wanted to ask you about, you started the film showing us some place, I don't know whether it was Nepal or some place like that. So you had something about Buddhist philosophy, and you mentioned also the Dalai Lama in the film. So I wanted to know what is your inspiration from there for this film or in general?
The first scene of the film was the way going up to the Ramsala, where he lives, where I was, a few times. But anyway, you see, since I started to, as I said, doing architecture, I asked myself these two questions that were that I put forward in the beginning of the film. And, I went around the scientific world. I studied and did research with Christopher Alexander. And, the scientific world really gave me the right answers. I mean, the answers that I was looking for. But then I thought that, the Buddhist philosophy, I would say, it's not the spiritual aspect, it's the science of Buddhism, the fundamentals of Buddhism, very relevant to my questions. Because, they are talking about this interrelationship between the parts and the whole. The fact that you you have to be very connected to reality, to where I work on the site, and all of these things that they are really talking about, I think very useful and beneficial to apply in your approach to architecture. But so after that, so I went there and I did a lot of seminars, with these Buddhist scholars and the Dalai Lama, and until these days I'm doing it because I'm really interested in that. But then I said, wow, maybe all these questions, and metaphorically, the road that goes up to the Ramsala is very similar, as you saw in the film, the road that goes up to Tzfat. Tzfat is also on a mountain. And then I said, wow, maybe all these answers I already got as a child in Tzfat, although subconsciously, I was not aware, and only from my present point of view and reconstructing memories, I can appreciate that. Of course, I mean, I never looked at my grandmother as a Zen master, but I think she was really, a Zen character, and the way she was, doing the things. So this is why basically, and each time I read more, about Buddhism, I think that it's very relevant. It's very relevant the way you look at, the things and now you see, she said that why we go here, we go there, and we don't find it in the modern stuff and all of that, because you see, this is really the difference, and this is how it's related also to Buddhism, to the fundamental, that the things they can't have a sort of self-existence. They are always related and dependent on other factors. Now, in the past, architecture was really aware of it, aware of the culture, aware of the site, aware of the trees, aware of it was very organic. I mean, it was part of the nature, or, of the whole thing. These days, it's only copy-paste. I mean, once, if you actually look in an architecture journal and you don't see where it is built, you can never tell if it's in China, Tel Aviv, India, Paris, or London. It's the same, because it's not related to anything. I mean, people also, they design on the computers. They can be in New York and design a site in Tzfat. They can be in Tzfat and design a site in, I don't know, in Africa. And they are not aware of the importance really to listen to even to the hidden voices of the place. So I think in that sense, this is very much related to the philosophy of, of Buddhism, how you actually have to be very aware about reality and take it into consideration. So this is partly to answer the lady, but I don't know. She was stuck.
I'm.
Well, over 10 years ago, I gave a lecture in Beijing, in China, in Tsinghua University Architecture School. And you know, I was really shocked. I was really amazed. You know, you go to Beijing and you see all these buildings and all this modern stuff, the tram coolers and whatever was doing this rubbish. And I told them, it's a pity. You have such a profound thousands of year culture and tradition and philosophy and religion and Confucius and you know, you're not related to it. I mean, you do all this architecture today, which has no identity whatsoever. And of course, it's not only there, and it's a pity, but there are places which are new. If we take Tel Aviv, it's a new city. I mean, it's only, I don't know, 100 days, something, but places like, you know, like India and China and Japan, they have such a great tradition. Why not take something from that and have modern architecture, but which is identified with this beautiful past, beautiful culture, you know? So this is, and the reason the modern architecture, you don't want really to visit again and again. I mean, we visit, we go to see these icons, I'm not saying, but once it's enough. You don't go again and again to see this iconic architecture. Is because they are not generated from the real stuff, you know? I mean, they are generated from the vision of the architect, or I mean, from things which has nothing to do with really feeling and being at home, nothing to do with that issue. So, and as
Yes.
As Roshni said, you know, I mean, today also, you know, all these building rights and density and you know, real estate and all of these things, they put, you know, they do these things. But I don't blame that side so much, because I think that so it's not an ideal situation, but in any situation, you can do better than the ordinary contemporary architecture is doing. Of course, there are good things also, but the more, you know, the majority is, yeah, it's generated by, you know, I don't know, money.
Would you think that, you know, the emotions or feelings of people are being evoked when we go to these buildings? And that is the reason why we can relate with it more, and we can go back. We want to, you know, there's an urge to go back and go back again and visit the space again, because you know, you are never full of it. You always feel that, you know, there was that corner, you know, which I couldn't observe properly. So okay, like I was there in Tel Aviv, and I wanted to, every day I wanted to go to Jaffa.
Yeah,
because I felt that the experience, I couldn't, you know, sort of capture the whole thing. So, do you think that, you know, those, it is because of the emotions and feelings which are generated in the humans? I mean, because I'm not from that culture, but still I could, you know, very well relate to the place and to the space. So, so these spaces should, I think, resonate with our feelings and emotions better than, you know, than it does now in any of these old new buildings. Do you think that would be the reason, or is there any, you know, different skill which the architect should have, which
yeah,
is which probably they are not teaching in schools now, because uh, there's less talk every day, every time I'm there in my design studio, there's less talk about the feelings and emotions it evokes in people who are visiting.
absolutely. Well, first of all, I think you are right. I think that Frank Lloyd Wright, who was a great architect, you know, sorry, 20th century architect, he said that, you know, architecture should be much beyond words. And which means really, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you look at films, buildings, art, fine art, visual art, that you really want to you can never get you tired. You want to again and again are really the things that create emotional feelings, period. I think so. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not intellectual experience only, it is emotional feelings. This is, I mean,
Yes.
yeah. So if we talk about timeless places or artifacts, yeah, it's the ones that create emotional feelings. And as I say, but you know, it's not enough to say it, but the question is what generates this feeling and what is behind these places. And I think that, like, you know, I mean, you know, there is no question about that there are rules of harmony in music. Yes, I mean, you know, I mean, and also you have music and you have music, you know. But in architecture or in art, they always had the hypothesis, I guess until today, that beauty or feeling or beauty is a subjective matter. Now, if it is a subjective matter, there's nothing to talk about because you think this way and the other person thinks that way. So there was never a discussion or conference what is actually beauty, because if it is a subjective thing, what can you talk about it? Now, Christopher Alexander came and said, wait a minute, it's not a subjective phenomena. I mean, beauty or feelings and stuff like that, you know, it is generated from something, and there is a way to talk about it, like in any scientific phenomena. Okay, it is a scientific phenomena. So, so this is the thing. But I agree. I mean, I was teaching for many years in schools of architecture, and yeah, and most of the people will, I mean, not the students, but the, you know, the faculty, they were very suspicious about this thing. I mean, you know, they were very, even some antagonistic about it, because wow, there is an objective phenomena. So what about us? I mean, you know, what about me? I mean, am I not to decide what is beautiful and not beautiful? No, you are not. I mean, it's not a personal vision. But okay, so then they say, okay, so what is our role? I mean, if it is not a subjective matter, what is the role of the architect if it's not for him to implement his fantasy? So what I think is that it's not less difficult when we think, I mean, the way that I think, because it's not a subject, it's not a passive process. I mean, it's not, you know, I'm waiting and the things falls from the tree. No, being aware of the real stuff, or being aware of the voices, and I say in the film, the hidden voices, or the things that you really see, being really aware of it and conscious about it is very difficult. I mean, it's an active process. It's not a passive one that you sit on the floor and wait for solutions. No, but you focus on other things.
I'm really enjoying the discussion. Thank you, Srishti, for that good, very interesting question.
Yeah.
And I just want to, Srishti, can you give a little bit about yourself? Are you from?
I'm from Hyderabad,
Hyderabad.
and I teach at the School of Planning and Architecture, JNA FAU,
Okay.
in Hyderabad, and I'm also pursuing Ph.D. from IIIT. Okay. So, yeah, and I love writing papers and, you know, discussing and coming to these sort of meetings and events. Thank you for that.
Lovely.
What I wanted to say, just a suggestion. First of all, I would really like to, like I do with all, you know, these sessions that I do all over the world, I would really like to keep in contact with you people. So please, you know, through my website, you can you just put niliportugali.com and you get my email, and please I really, I wrote about it, and I think the best book was the one that I published 15 years ago, which is Holistic Phenomenological Approach on Architecture, which is called The Act of Creation and the Spirit of a Place. It was published in Germany by Edition Axel Menges, and if you belong to a university, you can always ask them to buy it also to the library. And I think what is helpful, I think, in the book, that it's not only theory. The first chapters are more sort of general one, yeah, but then the main thing is how it was implemented in real projects in different levels of scale. You know, urban scale, private houses, public buildings, how this whole approach was actually in practice, implemented. And I think if you are teaching also, I think it will be interested to see.
Yes, thank you.
I think we touched on a very important subject when Srishti said, what do we learn from the old? What is it in the old structures that really attracts us? And it's more about the feelings and emotions that we talked about. And I was just wondering, because a lot of the focus today, even on vernacular architecture, it's about the science. We're looking at the scientific principles, like, the stack effect, or, the shading that they do, or things like that. But there is something beyond that we are probably missing in these old structures. And I was just wondering, is it possible to teach these?
Is it possible?
How do you teach, or how do you get to learn about this for the students, for example?
I was very lucky because, I had the first-hand experience with Alexander, and since I came from Berkeley, I was also teaching. And I think there is a very systematic way to teach these things. First of all, the thing is, it depends which year you're taking, but I think it's good to take not the first year, but say you take the third year of architecture or whatever, and they are not already very spoiled, but a little bit. So you have to shake them. But first of all, they have to be aware that there are facts. I don't know if I can explain it to you now. I think we have to go through it in a more, when we have more time, or I don't know. But anyway, what I did, for instance, I had a workshop where, first of all, the first step was let them be aware what it is the difference, to feel the difference between places that really endowed with spirit and soul that you feel at home, and the places that don't have it. Now, they have to experience it by themselves. It's not enough to teach, to tell them. They have to self-experience it themselves. So, there are many ways to do it. So I was showing and PowerPoint and examples and but then I gave them exercise to, to just walk in the streets and bring examples. And first of all, they have to be aware there is a difference. I mean, these people, they think that everything is the same. So actually being aware of the phenomena. Then before why it is like this and all of this, no, before just being aware that there is a difference, and there are places which have it and there are places which don't have it. Okay. And then, I told them the whole thing about better language. I mean, I did, then I asked them also to which is very difficult, to analyze buildings and see if they see things in common between different buildings, that they have this feeling, but they look different. So also they learn from themselves, and because I know about myself. When I came to Berkeley, you know, I was already a postgraduate, and I started to study with Alexander. And it was after, you know, 6 years that I've been already an architect also. I was very antagonistic. You know, I said, whoa, what do you mean? I mean, there are objective things, there are patterns, what are you talking about? And slowly, I was convinced that there is truth in it. So, and then you teach them, of course, the patterns in different ways, you know. I mean, I can show you what I did, the way I did it. I will be happy to show you, but we can't do it now. And then I exercise it with them on the site. I give them very small design exercises, you know, just, I don't know, to design a 2-room, I don't know what, apartment or whatever, but to teach them the methodology. I take them to the site. They have to choose a site, not to design on the computer, and they go to the site. And first they have to list the patterns that are relevant for the project, etc. And then they go to the site and see what's going on there and being aware and really come to the drawings from the site, you know, etc. So the main thing really is once you know, you talk to them, you teach them, you show them, and all of this, and you can go and analyze with them buildings, but they have to experience it themselves. The whole thing, the process, the understanding, the feeling, because otherwise it doesn't help, you know, it doesn't help. And I think from my experience, you know, there were students who did not get it on first hand, no. But after a few years, I remember that I met a student that I was teaching in Bezalel, and she came to me, and it was a few years after she finished school, and she said, you know, I've been now in Italy for 1 year. I lived in Toscana or whatever, and now I understand what you were talking about. Sometimes they don't understand it immediately, but afterwards, you see, I think that the pattern language, for instance, you know, the book Pattern Language is really not only a guide, but a tool how to understand and look and analyze the environment. I think it's very important. I mean, the way, because if they look through these patterns, they understand that there is some substance, you know, within it. And but I mean, you know, it's you need you know, a whole year with students to go really. And there is a nice book that it's called the Oregon Experiment. It was a project that was done by Alexander with 15 students in Berkeley. They were master degree students, and they designed the University of Oregon. It shows the process very nicely, but there is a book, it's called, he took a site in San Francisco, and for 1 year they designed the site with 15 students. And first they build the pattern language, and the whole process is described in this book, which is, I think, a very nice thing. A new concept of urban design, something like this it's called. And then you see how he actually went through a whole process with a bunch of students to practice these things. And there are many ways of doing it. I don't know. Once I gave also a design course, you know, they had to do building. So it took like 1 year there. Then most of the years I was interested really to do more like a workshop for 1 semester.
Nili, when the pandemic is over, maybe and you will come to India, we can do a workshop with you over here in India.
Wow, yeah. Yeah,
It sounds absolutely very interesting. We will all be interested to participate, and learn from this. And I do remember Christopher Alexander. Well, in college we used to, we had the pattern language book, but I don't think we paid much attention to, and this was not part of our curriculum or anything. But now we need to possibly relook at it. Yes.
Who introduced it to you? One of your tutors? Or?
Well, yes, it was part of one of the subjects maybe, but just introduction, as in this is, I think it was part of town planning or something like that. It was just introduced as a book, and it was there in the library in the B.Arch courses, but I don't think I paid much attention, but I'm sure.
It's the notes on the synthesis of form. Was actually a book which shows, how he came to this whole notion of patterns when he analyzed the village in India. Well, this was, I think, on the 60s or something, and then he developed and developed and developed, and went on and on and on. But interesting.
So, how far has filmmaking kind of influenced your design thinking and the practice you have been doing? And the second question is about I wanted to really appreciate the way you portrayed the layers of plasters in the buildings. So it really captures the essence of, like, there are many peoples and activities that has happened. It kind of captures the time that has been gone through, and there is a essence of imperfection we can see on these plastered walls, which actually kind of evokes many memories and emotions. So I wanted to ask you, like, how far has the modern architecture kind of embraced those kind of aspects, like the beauty of imperfections, which bring out the actual the humanitarian side, or the real essence of a space, which makes you kind of feel connected to a place. I didn't know if I framed the right question. I was kind of.
Yeah, the first question is it doesn't exist, because first for 45 years I did architecture, and then I did the film, and I never went back to architecture. So basically the film was very much influenced by the way that I was doing architecture, but not the other way around.
Yeah, but still, if you are going to practice again somehow, what are do you have any special, advantages right now?
I think that architecture is, sorry for saying, you say you came from the film media?
No, I wanted to study filmmaking, but my parents forced to do architecture.
Yeah, okay. No, I think that architecture is still the queen of the arts, and it embodies much more, how would I say, it's a more complex thing, and much more ingredients, and much more complicated. I mean, I don't think that a filmmaker easily can design a building, but I think, as far as I was concerned, an architect can do a film. There is more in architecture to learn from than. Yeah, well, in film there is sound, and there is narrations, and but on the other hand, I mean, it's very different. It's very different. I think architecture embodies much more ingredients. So sorry, and the other question, sorry, I just say it in one word again so I remember.
I don't know how to put that question correctly. Like, mostly about the weathering aspect. I mean, the olden architecture almost kind of embraced those kind of elements, the act of weathering, degradation, all those things. But right now, the modern architecture is all about very cleanly spaces, high polished, very novel spaces. So that is I feel kind of lacking the human, very human feeling of that space. A very artificial kind of setting. How far do you think the modern architecture had tried to embrace those kind of elements.
What, the elements that the traditional architecture embraced?
Yeah.
I don't think they embrace anything of them.
I think he was talking about the imperfections that in the plaster, for example, of the walls in the spot. So in the modern buildings, it's more like a clean effect, and it's not that humane.
Yeah.
So that's his question actually.
No, this is a very, very good question. Okay. After the pattern language was done, there was a further research. You can get hold of all of this, really. I think it's the 4 volumes of The Nature of Order. This is the last publication of Chris Alexander, which really embodies, I think, many of these things. It's called The Nature of Order, 4 volumes. And in there, one of them is talking about the geometrical properties. Not only geometrical, but 14 properties that also has to be embodied in anything, and it doesn't matter the level of scale. I mean, it's a long thing, but read it. But so now one of the properties, it's amazing, which you say, it's called roughness. Roughness. Now, what does it mean by roughness? It's not artificially doing something rough. It's actually relating to the actual situation that exists at the moment that you're doing something. And what do I mean by that? You see, the elements or the things that are done today, many of them are done in the factory, brought, to the site ready. If you take, for instance, I don't know, bricks, okay? The bricks are done and they are all equal, identical, all of them identical. You put them on a wall and it looks, or the ceramic tiles, so all of these things, you look, it's perfect, but it's not perfect. It's perfect in the modern concept, as you said, but it's so cold and alienated because it's all done in a factory and not by hand, okay? Now, in the past, for instance, and I'm not saying that you should repeat the process in the past. Why do I see another, I don't know. I don't see I don't know. Something jumps. Anyway, is the guy who asked the question there? Yeah, okay. Now, if you look at the organic process, which is also piecemeal, for instance, you have, I don't know, a step in your doorway, okay? And now you have to do a door. Now, maybe the stair is not 100% 90 degrees to the wall. Maybe, I don't know. So then you have to adjust the angle of the door to the stair because you want to go up the stair and open the door. So it has to be in parallel to the stair. And in that case, the door will not be absolutely in parallel to the wall. But that's fine. Because why it's fine? Because it is related to the real situation that you have to cope with. Now, if you think mechanically, you would put the door straight with the wall, but then when you climb the stair, you will fall down because the door angle is not related. The position of the door is not related, and this is, I think, can answer your question. You see, okay, the plaster wall that you saw now, it's hundreds of years, and it's not new and stuff like that. But I think that even if if the person who did the plaster, you take, I think, I come always to the books of Alexander because I think it teaches a lot. He has a book on carpet, he said the foundation of harmony in carpets. He analyzes Turkish and Persian carpets. And if you see in carpets that were done, not in a machine, it's never identical, because what they did the frame, but then when, okay, they did, I don't know, 2 flowers red, 1 flower black, 2 flower white, like this. But then when they came to the end, there was a change, because, I mean, they couldn't repeat what they did. So they did half a flower because there was no space anymore, or something like this, if you understand what I'm saying. So the perfect, what they call today perfect, is another kind of perfect that we are calling, perfect is being perfect with the situation, and not perfect just in an abstract mechanical way, you see?
I got another perspective on that.
You see, for instance, when you look at the human body, there is a symmetry, a kind of symmetry, but the left side is not identical to the left. The left and the right are not identical in form, and it's symmetry, but it's not identical because each one has probably its own role, function, or whatever. So it's never identical, you see. And this is, I think, if we think about it, the reason of it, I think in architecture we should think the same. And when you design, for instance, a building on the site, I spoke about it in the building that I did for the senior citizens. There were 2 huge, beautiful, old, ancient trees there. Now, the perfect of today would be to knock down the trees and so-called be free and do whatever you wish. But if you take advantage of these trees, you said, wow, let's make the courtyard around the tree, and the boundaries of the courtyard or are actually generated from the distance of the trees. So this is what actually I'm talking about. But it's a different state of mind. It's a different thinking. For the solution is always a result of the way where you look for the for the solution, from where you take and it's very different. It's very different. I think modern architecture, you say, these walls and, all these high rise with the, I mean, even if you take the high rise Chrysler building in, Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, New York, which was all the Art Deco buildings, which were built, 1920s, 1930s in New York. Beautiful buildings. I mean, amazing. And look at the skyscrapers that are built today. I mean, completely another world. And it's not because, it's skyscraper, because they pay attention to another things, no details, no nothing. Look at the amount of details that they paid attention in this, in this Art Deco buildings. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, it's what you are looking for and what you are relating to, and from where you take your solutions.
Thanks, Nili, and thanks, Hari Shankar, for that very thought-provoking question. Dr. Kashyap wants to say something.
Okay, what I was saying is that based on whatever Shrishti and Nili were discussing on places where you go and you feel and it evokes emotions and other things. So I said there's something like biology in architecture. And the person who has created that structure, when you go there, it must be that he is transmitting some vibrations to you in some form. He is not there at this point of time, we all know. But the thing is, I feel that there must be something which human beings feel, because there is what you have your own biorhythm. In a similar way, it could be that the biorhythms left by the person who created that structure could be still vibrating, and it could be making you feel the way he feels, because he must have been totally dedicated in making that structure, and he doesn't want it to just disappear over a period of time. If you say it is timeless, the timelessness will come when that structure can really evoke those feelings. And you say that, yes, maybe there is something which we cannot understand today, but maybe as a hypothesis to test it, somebody could take it up as a research project and see, can we, what you call, put together biology and architecture and find out whether such things could exist, and if it exists, what could be the way it transmits such information to us to make us feel that this is what should be. If you say that environment has to be taken care of, and as humans, if we say that really we want to take care of it, there should be something which the environment should make us feel that what we are doing is wrong, and how do we change it to make it better. So I feel that the ancient sculptors and artists did leave something behind which transmitted that information to us whenever we went there. So that is something I think is worth thinking about. So Srishti has really made me think, and it's good. Maybe her PhD can look at some things like that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It's fine. By the way, if you want to let people know about the film, so there is no problem, because they can through my website they can have the links how to see the film.
Thank you. I think there are a couple of comments here in the chat box. Srishti said that we need to create imperfections consciously. And there is Senthilwell, who's unable to come online on the video because he's in a crowd, but he says, wonderful film, highly evocative of my childhood memories and how those pattern languages affect my place making as an architect today. So thank you so much, Nili. I mean, I'm really feeling very excited to go and learn about back to Christopher Alexander and all the books that you have mentioned, that, and I have written down a whole lot of books. So that gives me a lot of food for thought, and let's hope we can have you here, or at least do something online to take this further. It was really a very enjoyable. I'm still fine that whoever came here was really, really interested in the discussion, and we had a wonderful talk. We had a wonderful, thought-provoking discussion. At least I learned a lot. So thank you so much, Nili, and thanks everyone, all of you here. I really am grateful that you are here. I think we will now sign off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Very much. Thank you very much. And we keep in contact. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.